Hello, I'm Mike Apatra, and I'm the host of the Hoopball DFS Today podcast. Come join us as we go game by game, breaking down our top plays, fades, values, pivots, and talk overall strategy for both tournaments and cash games. And the best part, we're doing this 7 days a week. So come check us out. That's Hoopball DFS Today. And you can follow me on Twitter at Mike Apatra for any updates, listener contests, and DFS information.
The following is a Hoop Ball presentation.
Hoop Ballers! Welcome back to another episode of Today in Sports Betting. It is a beautiful Wednesday afternoon here on the East Coast, just before 3 o'clock. And I got my main man, Devin Ellington, alongside with a special guest today on the podcast, Dave Loughran. Before we say hello to them, just want to give a shout out to our sponsors over at manscaped.com. They got the best in men's below the belt grooming. They just released their new and improved Lawnmower 3.0, and with their water-resistant technology, it allows you to groom in the shower because, hey, guys, where else are we going to do it, right? Go to manscaped.com right now. Type in the promo code HoopBall20. That's HOOPBALL20 at manscaped.com. Get 20% off and free shipping. Devin, Dave, how are you?
Doing well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Is this just audio? Is it video and audio? What are we doing here?
Well, it's just a podcast, but it's nice to see your beautiful face here this afternoon.
Yeah, happy to be on with you. Just want to make sure, I can be a little bit more careless if I know we're not putting video up there.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, just podcast, just audio. But for those who don't know, Dave, he's on SiriusXMFantasy Radio. He's also part of Awesemo.com. Really happy to have him on the show. Before we jump into some picks and some bets, just want to let everyone know how Dave and I first met. I played DraftKings early on in my betting / degenerate career. Hit a couple nice little prize pools on the basketball on DraftKings. Won some nice chunk of change. And I reached out to Dave to really kind of fine tune my skills in the daily fantasy world. I think Devin has kind of a very similar story. So, yeah, Dave, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background, kind of how you got started in the industry, and, just maybe some nooks and crannies, get into some nooks and crannies and some, maybe find some golden nuggets here.
Sure. It's funny, too, Ira, because I didn't recognize the name immediately. The moment we popped on Zoom, I was like, oh, I know this guy.
It's been a while.
There's a lot of people in the DFS space. So that's more of a compliment than anything else. But, I do remember that going back. Listen, for me, it was a strange path. I went to school I guess I'll just jump right into it. I went to school for psychology. It's the worst decision of my life. Had I had parents that knew what to do as far as education goes, like, continued education, I wish they would have told me never to do that. Just a complete waste of money. Not for everybody, but in my case, it absolutely was. I worked at a drug and alcohol facility for a while. I thought I wanted to pursue that. So I had nothing to do with this. I always played fantasy sports, but DFS at the time was still pretty new. It was more so in its infancy. And I think I never really had many bad breakups in my life. It's usually, truthfully, it was usually me doing the breaking up. This time it wasn't. And I was a little bit beat up over this, right? It was uncharted waters. And I'm driving to the gym one day and I hear a commercial for FanDuel. And I was like, oh, what's this? This sounds great. It was towards the end of baseball season in August. And so football season was coming around. I was like, oh, I know fantasy football. I'll crush it. Anybody with that mentality now, I tell them you're barking up the wrong tree. It's a terrible idea, not a terrible idea to play, but a terrible idea to think that because you're good at fantasy football season long, that you're going to be good at this. It's an entirely different game. It's way more difficult. In 2013, 2012 or so, when I started playing, it was way different. Now in 2020, it's not even comparable whatsoever with the amount of tools that are out there, and everything that has made the game so much more difficult, but also so much more enjoyable. And I just got into it. I put $40 in, I lost it. Put another 40 in, I think I lost it, and then I put 40 in again. I didn't have a lot of money at the time at all. And then I ended up hitting a couple tournaments, started learning how it worked with baseball, won a couple baseball tournaments, and then started playing basketball, won a couple of them, ended up getting into the live finals back then. They still had them. I tied, and if you know Head Chopper, the first one I ever tied for, I remember this vividly because he beat me in the tiebreaker, ended up not getting into that, but I was hooked after that. And I just started looking around. Now I'm still at my job at the time. I still had my job, what I thought would be a career. And I started looking around to do, some writing for DFS and Fake Basketball. Chet over at the Fake Basketball. Great guy, by the way. Picked me up.
Oh, Chet, yeah.
Yeah, Chet's a real good guy. And he started, he couldn't pay a ton. It was a free service. And so I was doing this for not much whatsoever, but I loved it. And then Dave Kitchen from Fantasy Insiders, one-time Fantasy Insiders, hit me up and said, hey, listen, what do you think about coming up, starting a new site? And you get in at the ground floor. I said, sure, absolutely. And then I also started doing a little bit of work for RotoWire. It really was just a completely organic process. I didn't know anybody at the time, but I was fortunate enough to get my foot in the door at a time where there wasn't a lot of content. There was Roto Grinders and a couple other free services. But it was like, if you got, people ask me all the time, like, how do I get in the door now? And I give them a similar story, but it is different. It's much more difficult now to get your foot in the door. Back then,
Right.
As long as you did a little bit of writing, as long as you were willing to work and people appreciated what you did and you were transparent, like, you could end up, and that's where most people are today. Like, you look at a lot of the people that in the industry, most of those guys started around I did and just jumped into it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's kind of how this podcast became, had some success with the daily fantasy, obviously been a sports bettor since I was probably 14, 15 years old, and kind of reached out to a few people, tried to network a little bit, got in touch with the guys over at Hoop Ball. And now I'm hosting this podcast with Devin, and it's been 8-9 months already. And, we're
Sure.
growing tremendously, and
Yep.
it's kind of one of those things. You just gotta be willing to do the work and not get paid very much for doing it in the beginning. And then maybe some opportunities come your way.
Yeah.
And now Dave, you're Mr. Big Time. You're on radio.
Yeah.
You're part of Awesemo. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I've hardly Mr. Big Time, but I have carved out a little niche for myself, sure. And the truth is, people, again, how'd you get in the radio? I owe a lot of it to Dan Strafford, by the way, who I've been doing podcasts with since the beginning, Fantasy Insiders. Little bit of information here. We were the first.
Dan Strafford.
Yeah, we were the first site to do a daily fantasy podcast. Now, what I mean by that is not a podcast for daily fantasy, but we were the first one, as far as I'm aware, or at least the first one that gained any recognition, to do a daily fantasy podcast where it was like daily plays every day, right? Breaking down the slate each and every day. And Dan was a great great host. I learned a lot from him. And he knew the channel director over at SiriusXMFantasy, Matt Deutsch, and ended up grabbing us a show from Monday through Friday, 12 a.m. Eastern time. It was a tough gig, man. Dan had 2 kids at the time. He'd be falling asleep, waking up right before it, sometimes not waking up at the right time. But, it was Monday through Friday, 12 to 2 a.m. Eastern. We're both on the East Coast, so it wasn't like we had that luxury of being on the West Coast and starting at 9. And then got my foot in the door there, and then grabbed a show at FanVice Radio. We got a show, and then that, when Awesemo acquired FanVice, it became Awesemo Radio. So, it kind of just happened. And the honest to God truth is, in this industry, and I would assume with most industries, like, if you just work hard and put the hours in every day, usually somebody recognizes you and says, look, I'm trying to bring you on. We appreciate your work and your work ethic. And that's kind of the way it works.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I agree with that 100%. I mean, listen, before I was doing this podcast Monday through Friday, and sometimes we'll throw a show over the weekend as a bonus episode, I worked full time too. You know what I mean? So I'm doing a million different things, burning the candles on both ends and just doing this out of the love for the game, So leading into that, you did have an interesting comment that I just want to ask a quick question about. You said when people talk to you about getting into daily fantasy sports today in 2020, right? It's easy. I play season-long football, season-long basketball, season-long baseball. How hard could it be, right? What do you think the trajectory of daily fantasy and betting on sports going into 2020 really is all about? It seems to be that obviously all the big boys now are getting into owning sports books and opening sports books with the legalization in different states. So are you thinking that the daily fantasy is kind of going to go down to how poker became after Black Friday, where now it's just a bunch of sharks with algorithms and all these statistical averages and more people, and there's more opportunity in sports betting? Or give me your thoughts kind of on the 2020 landscape here.
I don't think it's ever going to just kind of fall off the face of the earth or become, a backroom type of deal in the way poker was. But I definitely think, and I can't imagine anyone would disagree, that sports betting will become exponentially bigger than DFS. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, DFS takes time, not only to learn it, but to put the pieces together every day. The research that goes into it, plus the edge, isn't what it used to be. That's why good tools, though, are completely necessary at this point. But more than anything, when it comes to sports betting, you can hop on DraftKings Sportsbook, FanDuel, wherever. Poker Stars has their own book, Fox Sports, Bet Rivers. The list goes on. There's so many of these online books. And you just go in there and you hit a button and you can bet on a game that way. There's more. It's simple. There's more simplicity to sports betting, right? Now, the one thing, though, is that you can draw a stark contrast between sports betting and DFS in one way. And with sports betting, you can become consistently profitable if you do it the right way. Bankroll management. I think the same is similar with anything. But with DFS, there's still that allure where you can win $100,000 in a contest. The odds are astronomical. There's no question about that. But you're putting a team together, and you're putting yourself in a position to hopefully win a lot of money. With sports betting, you're usually not betting plus 100,000 dogs. You're betting minus 110. So you're not even doubling your money on each bet, at least for the most part. Sure, you'll take some bets, some value bets at times, but all in all, DFS still gives you that opportunity to quote unquote hit the lottery, and I don't think that's going anywhere.
Yeah, no, and that right before we worked together, I hit a $4 NBA 125,000 players for $30K. That was kind of how I got really involved in the industry and kind of licked my chops and really just kind of flew, and give a little shameless plug, helped kind of co-found, guide a new kind of startup daily fantasy, app called Overlay. Basically what it is, tonight, let's say, or in basketball, let's say it'll be James Harden versus Russell Westbrook. All you got to do is decide who's going to have more total fantasy points. If you're right, you get a win. If you're wrong, you get a loss. There's 12 picks you need to make for your lineup. If you go perfect 12-0, you're going to hit the progressive jackpot around $20,000. And if you just cash in the top 10% of the best win-loss tie records, you're going to win 9 times your buy-in. So it's it's kind of like a double up and a GPP. You have like the double up aspect where all you got to do is finish in the top 10% of the records. And there's still that nice little progressive jackpot that grows every single day, kind of making it like a GPP blend as well. Devin, I know you haven't said much on the podcast. I know you were really instrumental in putting this together. So kind of want to turn this over to you. Maybe you had a couple questions for Dave before we get into maybe a couple games here for Wednesday evening.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks again, Dave. I told you preemptively there was going to be a few of those. So I appreciate you coming on here, man, and making time out of your day.
Happy to be here. Yeah.
So on a recent podcast of yours, I did hear that you're getting into betting baseball a little bit more, and you spoke just very shortly ago about contrasting and parallelism in between sports betting and DFS. What baseball have you been betting into lately, and How's that been going for
it's
you?
Probably against the Phillies every night.
No, that's just against the Sixers spread. And, in all seriousness, I love my Philly teams, but I try and take a completely objective stance when it comes to them. And oddly enough, you can't actually. You hear a lot of people say, like, don't bet on your teams that you love. If you're willing to bet against them, I completely disagree with that, because generally you know them better than any other team.
Right.
And the Sixers, we know, were consistently bad on the road, consistently good at home. But anyway, when you just mentioned the parallels drawn between them with baseball betting and anything else, really, a lot of the research you're doing is almost exactly the same. You're not going as deep into the research for like each individual hitter, but you know, when you're talking about pitchers, I'm going into Brooks Baseball, I'm going into Fangraphs, I'm going into Statcast. I want to see I want to see what's going on with these pitchers. For example, I did a show this morning, and Adam Scher and I, who've been doing shows together for years now, we got into, Masahiro Tanaka, whose fastball is finally looking a lot better, four-seamer throwing more. Zach Godley, who scrapped his sinker and is throwing the cutter 40% of the time, and his off-speed stuff looks good, and his knuckle curve is finally coming back. It obviously doesn't always pan out, but I think I'm always looking at the pitchers in a situation like that. And the bullpen specifically as well. The Phillies are actually a phenomenal example of a team that, no matter how good their starting pitching is, the bullpen is very liable to blow it every single night. But look, I really love betting basketball. That's my favorite sport to bet, and football. And I'll get into some niche stuff. The XFL, I was having a great time betting.
That was
XFL.
fun. That was fun
before the coronavirus. But yeah, ultimately with baseball, it's not identical research, but you're just looking for that edge and trying to identify lines that are favorable. And I think one of the best ways to do that is by looking at pitchers who may have made some changes that no one's discussed yet, whether they're good or bad changes, and drawing conclusions from that. Yeah,
like case in point, I mean, today I took the White Sox over in the game, over team total 4.5. I just thought that, Boyd, the lefty, the Chicago White Sox have been hitting righties in general have been hitting Boyd like almost at 400, and the 1 through 6 part of the lineup, 1 through 7, especially with McCann playing catcher today, he's caught Boyd like 40 times in his career. I just thought it was a good spot for the team total and the over here in this game. Obviously, it's 7-5 right now, Chicago in the middle of the 6th. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what you got to look for. You got to look for, like, I like betting team totals too. I mean, I feel like, are the lines accurate? It depends. I feel like if you really, really search, you're going to find a line or two that is off. And I thought 4.5 was a good number here for the White Sox, and obviously that cash. But if you look at, like, for example, like last night, like Bundy for the Angels, I mean, his stuff is just way better than it has been.
Yep.
Way better.
He's always had great stuff. He's just never been able to put it all together.
I mean, he looked fantastic last night. And not to rub any salt in the wound for you, Dave, but how about that infield fly ball last night?
I wasn't going to bring it up.
I saw you posted on your Twitter, but I was just dying of laughter because I had me and Devin both had the Orioles last night.
You see the video I posted on?
Yeah.
I should give you an idea where I was. I was a couple whiskey drinks deep, and I looked at that. I was like, I got to do something with this. It was remarkable. The third baseman trips over the mound as the ball's under the first baseman's glove, and then he drops. It's just crazy. And then
it's like, why is he even calling for it? It's not on his side of the mound.
Right.
I know, it's crazy. Hoskins should have been a little louder there, but still. And then in the top of the 10th, Roman Quinn dives, completely lays out for a ball that's 400 yards in front of him. It rolls to the warning track. He goes to pick it up and falls on his ass and then throws it. It goes off 2 gloves, more runs score. Oh, just an absolute disaster.
Manny Ramirez did.
Sure did.
It's crazy. And they blow a game where they score, 8 runs? They blow a game where Bryce Harper hits a game-winning, The whole thing has been really tough to watch. That's okay, though. The Flyers are looking good. Sixers don't have a shot, but, it is what it is. And there's some good betting opportunities on those teams, too.
Absolutely. Speaking of the Sixers, I was on your boy's show maybe about a week ago, Eitan Shander.
Eitan. Great guy. Love him.
Great dude. I was on his show, did a little segment on the overlay and some betting picks, and we were in agreement that, hey, this Philadelphia 76ers team looks horrible. Took the Spurs +7. We had a nice little win there on that one. But, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, listen, the Sixers, we all know. I mean, now with Ben Simmons being out, it's obviously tragic. But before, I mean, they just can't win a game away. They can't win a game away from home. So, yeah, Eitan's a great dude. It's funny that we both know him now, and I thought that was a funny connection. But,
they've covered, I think, one game in the bubble. Even against Portland, I think they were 2.5-point dogs. They lost by 3. I think they've covered one game in the bubble. And that was against Orlando. So it goes to show you what you were dealing with even before Ben Simmons went down.
Yep. And so speaking of the 76ers, they're playing Toronto tonight. Line looks like to me 6. Any thoughts on this game for you, Dave?
So one of the biggest things with these games is it's just so important to pay attention to all of the injury news, right? Everything changes. Just a little piece of advice. One thing I do a lot with basketball, I had a lot of success on DraftKings doing it this season before, obviously, everything shut down. You get in on lines the night before, bet the games the night before a lot of times when they release them, because the lines change a lot in the morning, or have your notifications on, whether it's Woj or somebody else. So when injury news breaks, especially late in the season like this, or even earlier in the year, and say Giannis is a surprise inactive, these books do not immediately pull the games off the board. So that means that if Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis are ruled out and they're 3-point favorites against the Portland Trailblazers, you grab the Blazers as 3-point dogs, and in 5 minutes they're favored by 7. So that actually happens quite a lot. You have to be there right away. Like, you get maybe 2 minutes before it's off the board. But and it's not, a lot of times somebody might suggest that it's kind of a reckless decision. It's not if you're confident enough that you know these teams and you're familiar with where the line is, where it should be at the time. But, if the 2 best players from a team go down, I'm all over the other side of that game. And we're getting a lot of that. I think we're going to get more over the next 3 days before the season concludes. But anyway, the Sixers tonight, what is a 6:30 tip-off?
Yeah, and you got Embiid, Harris, and Horford are all going to play tonight.
Yeah, which is encouraging. Now, I don't know how many minutes they're going to play. The first thing I look at in a situation like this is what are the standings, right? Because ultimately, if you have nothing to play for, then there's really no reason to run your guys out there for full run. But the Sixers are 1 game back of the Pacers. They both have 2 games to go. I suppose they could get it. They could squeak into the 5th seed. I don't know if Brett Brown is even trying at this point.
Horrible coach.
Yeah, I just give me Kenny Atkinson yesterday, please. I'm so
I'm
tired
sure sure any one of us on this podcast can coach this team better than that guy.
I think most people. I'm not going that far. Maybe I could, but I can't give myself too much credit there. I do know that Brett Brown has not gotten the most out of these guys, and that is blatant, and it's obvious from everything that we've seen. There were a bunch of injuries or inactives for Toronto the other day as well. Now you're just looking at like OG Anunoby and Serge Ibaka being questionable. But, yeah, Ben Simmons is out. Alec Burks is out, who has actually played a pretty integral role in the bubble, closing these games out since Ben Simmons went down. Outside of that, you're getting everybody back. Last I looked, the line was at 6. Is it still at 6?
Yeah, it's still 6.
It's still 6, yeah.
It's still at 6. I actually don't – there hasn't been a lot of defense. Normally I would take the under on this game all day at 222. 6 points, this is a game that I don't feel comfortable with really on either side. But if I'm taking one side, I'm going to take Toronto to cover the 6 points. I'd rather lay 6 points than take 6 with the Sixers, given how they've played, particularly away from home. And especially knowing that Joel Embiid, I don't know if Brett Brown is going to give him his full allotment of minutes. So overall, I think Toronto is a little bit more predictable here, and Nick Nurse with his rotation should make it a little bit easier for us to know what's going to happen. And if that's the case, I'll take Toronto.
Absolutely.
I got 3 names. 3 names. Tyler Ford, Michael Smith, David Guthrie. Those are the referees for this evening, and they all have a favorable record in their games called to the over. So
Okay.
I think
By the
it's
way,
gonna.
I thought there were 3 people that I was supposed to know that I'd
No,
never heard of in my
absolutely
life.
I
not.
thought they were
Absolutely
3 guys
not.
that were starting tonight that I didn't know about either.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know
No.
basketball, but I don't know those guys. So you say they're all. So what are do we have? Do we have the records?
Yeah. So Tyler Ford, who's going to be the head official, it has a 24-29 to the over. Michael Smith, part of the crew, is at an even 500. David Guthrie, 23-29 to the
Is that
to the
23
over.
out of 29 games?
29 to the over, 23 to the under.
Gotcha. So
Okay.
marginally to the over. I mean, I have no real opinion on this game, so let's not talk about it that much more. Is there a game that sticks out to you tonight, Dave, that you think there's some value on in the NBA?
Yeah. Again, I just to anybody listening, I try and caution anybody, just pay really close attention to news. I know we've been getting a decent amount of it during the day, but just pay attention because this is the 9 p.m. game between Denver and the Clippers. The Nuggets almost beat the Lakers the other day with their B squad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dozier and Ball and Mason Plumlee are out there.
Plumlee throwing dimes.
Yeah, he had that nice tap away steal. They didn't count the basket, but it was really nice on the pass to PJ Dozier. But yeah, I think Denver's a pretty interesting team here. You know, Jamal Murray's finally healthy. Will Barton's out. Gary Harris is out. I'm not too concerned about that. But one thing that we've seen from Doc Rivers is, yes, last time out he did run a bunch of his starters. Maybe not last time out. Was Brooklyn the last game, or was it? Yeah, and they ended up losing that game to Brooklyn. I've heard people saying they're worried about the Clippers. I'm not even remotely worried about the Clippers. It's silly. Assuming that everyone gets their full run, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, Marcus Morris, Montrezl Harrell returns to the bubble, Lou Williams, you name it. These guys are going to be just fine. But I certainly feel like coming into these final couple of games where they don't really have anything to play for, opposing teams are in pretty good spots. So the Clippers are right now 1.5 games ahead of the Denver Nuggets. So the Nuggets would have to win both. The Clippers would have to lose both. The Clippers might win this game, right? But I think it stays very competitive with a mostly full-strength Denver team. And from what we've seen in the bubble, they've been pretty lackadaisical. And Doc Rivers has clearly shown that he's willing to sit Kawhi. He's willing to sit Paul George later in games. So 5 points, I think, is actually a lot for two teams that are pretty evenly matched given their current situation. In a 7-game series, I take the Clippers and, probably 5, maybe 6. But Denver does play them quite well, and I think their interior presence with Nikola Jokic is going to make a huge difference. So give me Denver +5.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you on that. I mean, I'm from LA. I'm an LA boy, so I follow the Clippers and Lakers pretty closely. Doc's just the type of guy. He's just like, what do we need this for? We might start him. I'm probably not going to give him full run tonight. They're just getting geared up and ready for this playoff.
I'll give you another thing too. Consider this. Would you rather face the Dallas Mavericks or the Utah Jazz? Because
the Jazz.
I would much rather face the Utah Jazz. Now, Doc Rivers has said, like, we don't care about that. We're not looking at that. But of course he's going to say that. So, if I'm the 2 seed and I'm facing the Mavericks with Porzingis looking completely healthy, playing 40 minutes a game, and Luka Doncic looking like a legitimate MVP candidate, give me a Utah Jazz team that is in complete disarray, losing 5 of 7 games to start the bubble. Maybe that's actually in the cards here. And if that's the case, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being conspiratorial, but I definitely think if I'm the Clippers, no matter how good you are, I'd rather face a team that's in much worse condition heading into the postseason.
Absolutely. And Doc's not stupid. He knows, and he's going to try to get that matchup as well. Yeah, I mean, listen, I love that Dallas Mavericks team. I actually bet them to win the NBA championship before the season started. I got 90-1. So I have a big, nice little futures play on the Dallas Mavericks. I think there's a little bit of value. And if they can make a little bit of a run, maybe you start to hedge out of that position. But yeah, no, I'd definitely rather play the Utah Jazz. Dave, we got about 8 minutes left on the show. Any thoughts tonight in hockey? I know you are a hockey fan. Obviously, we had a classic last night in the Columbus Blue Jackets Tampa Bay Lightning game. Crazy,
awesome game.
Crazy game.
Yeah.
I'm watching that simultaneously with the Dame dropping 61 points. Isn't it great to have sports back?
Oh man, it's been too long. So anything you like tonight in hockey or baseball? Maybe a couple best bets for the night.
Yeah, hockey. I think I mentioned to you guys at the top of the show. I love playoff hockey. I don't know anything about betting hockey, so I'm the wrong guy for that. I just don't know the teams well enough. It's just one of those sports where I am. It's like, it's funny. It's completely unadulterated for me, right? With basketball and baseball, if I'm watching games, there's usually a reason I'm watching the game. Same with football. When it comes to hockey, I watch the game, and I love basketball, baseball, football. Don't get me wrong, but when it comes to hockey, I watch the games because I love the games. And I love the intensity of postseason hockey. It's a shame we can't have any fans in there. But yeah, all in all, this is just a sport that I used to know really well. I kind of fell out of it once I got into DFS and this world because I was forced to, take on 3 other sports. But I just love it. I don't know it well enough. I bet the Flyers tonight only because they've been playing exceptionally good hockey, and this sounds like a homer take, but it's not. It's literally the first time I've ever bet the Flyers, I think.
They look really good.
Yeah, they look really good. And they were plus 200, minus 1.5 goals, plus 200, and I think plus 140 minus 140, minus 143 to win this game. Judging from what we saw through those 3 round robin games, beating Boston handily, soundly beating the Lightning and the Washington Caps, it just looks like a team. And with hockey, when you get hot at the right time, baseball's similar. You can tear through a series.
Yeah.
I just think those odds are too good, and even plus 200 minus 1.5 is pretty enticing. But as far as baseball goes, like I said, I love looking at pitchers to see what they have. And you have Zach Godley and Blake Snell.
Yeah.
This one's tough because Blake Snell wants to go 5 innings, but I don't know if he will. I'm assuming he probably has an opportunity to do that, get him up to like 70 pitches or so. But right now, it's a 9 over under. I like the under here. And the reason for that is that Zach Godley, he is pitching on 3 days rest, right? He's pitching on 3 days rest, which is a little bit concerning, but he has looked like an entirely different pitcher with his arsenal, what he's throwing. And to me, if he can get 5 or 6 innings in here, given his change in pitch mix against the Tampa team that has really been struggling to produce at the plate, I have interest in the under there. And just another thing I'll throw at you if you're looking into certain players, Masahiro Tanaka has looked a lot better as well. I don't know if there's a strikeout prop on him, and I'm worried that his innings, that he's only going to be able to go a certain amount of innings. But if you get strikeout props on him and it's like, 4 or 5, which is definitely possible given his restrictions on his pitch count, I would take the over on Masahiro Tanaka's strikeout.
I've got 4.5.
Yeah, see, I know it's a tough matchup against Atlanta. They're a good team, but they do still have some strikeouts in that lineup.
Yeah, they strike out a lot, especially if Duvall's in there. If Duvall's in there, he strikes out more.
That's the thing. They've traded off contact. They traded off contact for more power, but that power comes with more strikeouts as well. So 4.5 over on 4.5. I like it. Yes, I'm worried about his pitch count for sure, but it's a pretty interesting spot. I like seeing when pitchers are doing something different and nobody's caught on to it yet.
Yeah,
Sure,
and your point, and to your point in the Tampa Bay Rays Boston Red Sox game, it might be a little bit easier to bet the first 5 innings under. The line right now for the first 5 innings is under 5 minus 110. It seems like a good number if that's what you're leaning towards, the full game under. I think, and especially talking about Godley and Snell, could be a good first 5 under 5 here.
Sure. And for me, a lot of it too is going to come down to how have these bullpens fared, right? Like with the Phillies, if you really love the 2 starter matchups, but you have no faith in the bullpen, then definitely there's like the Phillies ERA. I don't like to use ERA, but I'm just throwing this out at you guys. They have a 10.19 bullpen ERA this year. It's insanity, right? Insanity. But the Boston Red Sox on the season have a 417 xFIP in the bullpen. The Rays are sitting at 3.52. It's the fourth best in the league. So middle of the road for the Red Sox. It's 27th or so, fourth lowest for the Rays. They have had pretty good bullpen performances here. I'd look to see who's available in the pen first. But yeah, it's a spot where I think Godley could either get absolutely rocked or shut them down across 5 innings.
Yeah, and one more thing to add about your Flyers. I really like the Flyers. They're playing fantastic hockey. I don't think they're getting enough respect right now, and I think everyone's really high on the Canadians. I think that at minus 150, it's just a good number to be betting the Flyers here. I think that the line should be more like kind of where they were priced in the Pittsburgh Penguins series. I think that the Flyers should really be like a minus 170, minus 180 favorite in this game.
I thought so too, yeah.
Yeah, so if you can get anything under minus 150, I think it's a must bet here. Dave, couple minutes left. Just want maybe give a little info on where people can find you, follow you, and just enjoy your content.
Sure, guys. Awesemo.com, AWESEMO.com, or check me out, Awesemo Radio, SiriusXMFantasy. It's Sirius 210 XM87. And hit me up. Follow me on Twitter at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. If you like fantasy, you like sports, you like some random stuff, sports betting, and I've said this before, but I'm a self-proclaimed TV and movie critic, so I thoroughly enjoy talking about that stuff on Twitter, especially during the pandemic, during the quarantine where there was nothing going on. Got away from it a little bit, but Twitter's a fun place. It's also a hellish place, but you got to get sports information.
Got to take the good with the bad. Yeah, well, you got to take the good with the bad. But guys, once again, I'm Ira Silver. I'm at Ira Silver Magic on Twitter. Devin's at DALE007. Dave, once again, thanks so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.